Hello everyone, it's Michael Party here. I trust the term is going well. Since you're covering teamwork in your organizational behavior course this week, Sylvie and I agreed to take advantage of the opportunity and cover some practical topics on the subject. Specifically, I'm going to review team agreements, offer some advice in applying various conflict management styles, and wrap up with a discussion about difficult conversations. So, team agreements. Broadly speaking, the research suggests that there's sort of 9 buckets or 9 elements that are found in team agreements. They're laid out here. This is an important place to start teamwork, primarily because it provides an opportunity to have a conversation about what the team is trying to accomplish, why they're trying to accomplish those things, and how they're going to work together. Obviously, these conversations are sometimes challenging, sometimes vague and unclear, and as the team moves forward, sometimes they are unable to use the team agreement. But this is why it's important to have conversations around how agreements might get renegotiated, to have conversations about consequences if agreements aren't lived up to, and then ultimately how to resolve those kinds of conflicts. Regardless, agreements are an important place to start teamwork. You all know this, we've talked about that a lot, so that's just a quick plug for making sure that you revisit your agreements before you jump into your teamwork this term. So let's move on and talk about conflict management styles. Your textbook identifies 5 archetypal conflict management styles: competing, collaborating, accommodating, avoiding, and compromising. This is a fairly standard model built on the work of Kilman. What I wanted to talk about briefly is when we might choose to use these styles. So it's one thing to say that each of us has a preference for one or more of these styles, depending on the situation within which we're experiencing conflict. But it's also important to acknowledge that the research suggests that we can choose to use different styles depending on the context within which we're experiencing conflict. So let's talk a little bit about when we might choose to use these styles. So if we look at collaborating, this is a style that's appropriate when dealing with a complicated problem, when trying to come up with innovative solutions, when you're trying to gain and maintain commitment from the people on the team so that everybody is invested and engaged in the teamwork. And this is also an appropriate style when the outcome is important to everyone and nobody knows the solution. So we're all more or less on an equal footing in using this style. There are situations where the issue or the topic may be more important to somebody else, and so we might choose to adopt an accommodating style. This is also a useful style when you do believe that the other person is correct, in part perhaps because they are an expert. You may also choose to apply this style in order to avoid prolonged conflict. Usually this is appropriate when you have less of an investment in the solution and you're willing to kind of go along with what somebody else wants. Sometimes compromising is also appropriate. This may be true in a situation where any sort of single better solution is really unclear and not obvious. When various options on the table are mutually exclusive or perhaps equally powerful. And so, we all have to kind of give up a little bit to choose one. We may choose to use this style when we need a quick temporary solution for something, or even when we've tried one or more of the other styles and they're not working. Again, just to reinforce this, that these are sort of choices we can make when we enter into conflict. Sometimes avoiding is also appropriate. This would be appropriate, for example, when you're trying to create a cooling off period in a particularly heated conversation. So you might actually sort of avoid or sort of walk away from the conflict for a period of time before coming back and trying to work on the conflict. You might use this style when you're worried about how the other person might react, specifically if that person or the other people might react strongly and negatively or even dangerously. And then also, it might also be worthwhile at the other end of the spectrum when really you're dealing with minor or trivial issues. And so, why would you even bother engaging in conflict over something that's so insignificant? Sometimes an issue is important to you, and even perhaps it affects you significantly more than other people. In this situation, you may choose to enter into a sort of a competitive conflict management style. You may also consider this style when you have a degree of expertise that the others on the group don't, or even perhaps where the decision needs to be made quickly, and the decision is relatively routine, and so trying to engage everyone in the solution may just simply be a waste of time. The point with all of this, of course, is that, as I said at the top, we may have sort of a preference for approaching conflict in certain ways, but that we can actually think about how we want to show up in conflict. As conflict is going on, we can ask ourselves questions like, why am I defending this position? What are my interests, in this conflict? Are we really trying to achieve something together, or am I really trying to impose my will on others, or am I willing to let someone else get what they want? And you can think about these things in terms of, your desire to push yourself forward and your desire to sort of support the group. And as we talked about here, different kinds of situations might suggest different kinds of approaches here. So if you do find yourself in conflict, it may be worth taking a little bit of time and thinking about, how you are showing up and whether or not a different style might be appropriate. Whether we're talking about team agreements or we're talking about conflict management styles, we also need to talk about communication. All of these things obviously involve talking to each other, and often they involve difficult conversations, especially conflict. So I thought I would wrap up today just by talking a little bit about having difficult conversations.